Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we are live today on Tuesday, March the 12th. We got a lot to talk about. First, let me just bring you up to speed on the latest round of the presidential campaign, how President Biden and former President Donald Trump are on the verge of capturing the nominations for the Democratic and Republican parties, respectfully. We'll talk about today's big contest. Also, let's talk about learning, leading, advocating locally as we check in with Miss Bessie Adams, who is the who is a councilwoman for Grand Prairie, Texas. We'll talk a little bit about that. The NAACP is putting it out there that they want athletes to reconsider coming to Florida because of its anti-DEI policies. We check in with Amber Webb Sims to get the latest around that. And today is Equal Pay Day as we continue to celebrate Women's History Month. Stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation as we have these discussions. And folks, I want you to check us out. We're streaming on Big Brother Roland Martin's social media page. First, go to our home website at blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure you do that. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media. We would love to connect with you there. And of course, we are looking for your donations to be investors and stakeholders. So go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Now, we are streaming live on Big Brother Roland Martin's social media pages as we are an interactive digital program here on the Black Star Network. So that means that you could be a part of the conversation. So just as much as we're talking about the issues, I want to hear from you. That's what makes the culture such a unique experience here on the Black Star Network. We hear directly from you. So you can join the chat right now as we're streaming live from Brother Roland Martin's Facebook page on Facebook, and of course his YouTube channel on YouTube. And we would love to hear what you got to say. Big shout out to the online culture crew that's checking in already all around the country. Folks are checking in on YouTube, Facebook, and on the X platform. Let's give a little something for the culture crew. There we go. There we go. And I appreciate each and every one of you for checking in. We're also, folks, just want to bring you up to speed that we are keeping our eyes on what's going on in the city in Washington, D.C. As Special Counsel Robert Hur had to testify before the House committee. We'll talk a little bit more. I'm sure you can definitely get the latest news and information and what was all discussed at that hearing tonight on Roland Martin Unfiltered at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll do our due diligence on that piece tomorrow. But we are keeping that. We are streaming that on Black Star Network and a host of other great content. So just go to our website and go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, just check us out on all social media platforms. And we cannot thank you enough for your support. All right, folks are checking in. Let's jump right into it, folks, as we're talking about the presidential campaign, the latest in the presidential campaign. Did you know today, last week with Super Tuesday, today there are a number of states that are hosting they're having their primaries in Georgia, Washington State, Mississippi, and Hawaii. Now, that means that President Biden and former President Donald Trump are both on the verge of capturing the nominations, enough votes, enough of those delegates to get to cinch the nomination, if that can happen. It may be today, but it may not be today, depending on the voter turnout and how everything plays out. But let me just share with you the latest from AP News around this situation. Take a look here, folks, that neither Biden, a Democrat, nor Trump, a Republican, faces significant opposition in primary contests across Georgia, Washington State, Mississippi, and Hawaii. The only question is whether they will earn the necessary delegates in each state to hit the 50% national threshold to become their party's presumptive nominees. Whether it happens Tuesday night or in the coming days, the 2024 presidential contest is on the verge of crystallizing a moment that will solidify a general election rematch between Biden and Trump. In that rematch, the first featuring two U.S. presidents since 1956, will almost certainly deepen the nation's searing political and cultural divides in the 8-month grind that lies ahead. So, folks, that means that it is what it is. It's almost coming down to that point where we say it is official. And what do you think of this as we are approaching this moment again? We got to reach that 50% threshold to capture, to really clinch the nomination for their respective parties. And as a result of that, we will have a rematch. Now, look, I want to get your take on this, how you're feeling, how's your mind around this. I want to get you to hear what you have to say. So make sure y'all post your comments in the chat, both on our Facebook page and on Brother Roland Martin's YouTube channel. I got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to hear from you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat to the Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we're just talking a little bit about the presidential election. It looks like there are a number of states that are going to the polls today as they're looking to, as President Biden, former President Donald Trump, are looking to clinch their party's presidential nominations with dominant victories today. The Northern Mariana Islands, they are going to be voting for Democrats, voting for the Democrats today as well, along with Georgia, Washington State, Mississippi, and Hawaii. And it looks like after tonight, depending on how everything turns out, what we all have been talking about and expecting and forecasting may be official, depending upon how the Tuesday primaries go. But just a little check-in with you. Just a little check-in, because it's one thing to talk about and say, oh, now it's another thing to be like, this is really it. These will be the candidates that are in the 2024 presidential election. And I want to hear from you, crew. What's your take on this? How you're feeling about this? And how do you, just moving forward? Pauline, you hit the nail on the head. Hit the nail on the head, Pauline Hurd. Welcome to the chat again, Pauline. The fact that Donald Trump is the Republican nominee is mind-boggling, isn't it? Isn't it? It is very mind-boggling. Andre Wooding, thank you for checking in into the crew with the crew. You said old new. That's it, old new. I like it. Thank you so much, Andre, and welcome. Mind-boggling, old new. The fact that we're in this place, a rematch of two candidates that have two different visions of the direction that the country wants to go in. I know that President Biden, in his speech last week, his State of the Union speech, he really wanted to emphasize the two Americas, that we're at the crossroads of two Americas in this country. But it still always comes back down to the voters. And if folks don't participate, whether you do participate, it comes down to the voters of which America you truly, truly want this country to be. And I think that is the problem. That is going to be the interesting part about all of this. Which America you want this to be? Deidre Hall, you said President Biden needs to do more for voters, especially independents. Okay. I thought you were going to say that he needs to do more for Black voters, Deidre. So I'm glad that you kind of made that distinction, saying that he needs to do more for independents. It will be interesting because independents, they can't vote until the general election, but it will be interesting. And I think, well, let me just go back to that very quickly. And Deidre, you might be thinking the same thing on this. So just post it in the chat if you agree. They should change the rules that independents shouldn't be allowed to vote in the primary. They need to change that rule. They need to change it. It feels like you're being penalized for something, for just, not being a part of the two-party system. That I bet you, if they allow independents the same type of space that they allow Democrats and Republicans, I bet you a lot of people would become independents. Y'all think so? Do y'all think so? So it's interesting, but yes, speaking to independent voters, and we'll see if we can see. I wonder how many people are independent and like registered independent in this country. And I'm gonna ask my team, Chris, let's see if we can find that information, bro. How many registered independents are in the country? And if that's something that either Trump or Biden feel like they have to speak to. But Deidre, I appreciate you for posting that. Davey, yeah, Pauline, you said I would become independent. I know a lot of people would. If it was between Democrats and Republicans, and then you had independents, right, which could go either way, I bet you a lot of people would become independent. But because you can't vote in primaries, because it doesn't have the same backing as the two-party system, a lot of people say, well, I'd rather go vote for a Democrat or Republican because I at least know my vote is going to count, blah, 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 all those. But I bet you a lot of people would vote independent if if it wasn't structured the way it's structured. Let me see something here. Laura, you said I have 2 family members that are independent voters, and they said they're going to vote for President Joe Biden. All right. Appreciate you for posting that, Lori. C. Cole, you say because not enough folks will vote enough to win the White House, not some local election. Yeah, you would see a huge difference. Huge difference. Yep. C. Cole, welcome to the chat. Tonio, you said I'm not into any party. I hear you, Tonio. I hear you. Thank you for posting. Welcome again. It's good to connect with you, man. Raymond Harris, you said the U.S. Supreme Court will push the general public into voting not to elect former 45th president in his second term. Texting from Las Vegas, Nevada, checking in from all the way from the great city of Las Vegas. Raymond, thank you so much. That's it's going to be interesting. Deidre, you said you can agree with that if there were a lot more, if they structured the independent party to have a little bit more backing and power, I bet you. So Deidre, you say you can agree with that. Yeah, they need to, and then you would have to have an independent party. I know we've been talking about the idea of a third party system. Maybe the independent party is the third party system. That's a much bigger conversation at a later time. Just throwing it out there that, looking forward, right? Maybe that's the push that Black folks need to push. Like, let's be the independent party, the party of justice, the party of this, but let's put it under the independent banner and then advocate for more power for independence. All right, let me go to here. Let me get a couple of them. Cindy D, my sister, you say can't complain about the rematch of Trump and Biden if no other fighters were good enough to register and take over the fight. Here's the thing. They could have, the Republican Party, let's just focus on that real quick. Looking at Trump, there you mean to tell me, and I agree with what you're saying, and I understand exactly what you're saying, Cindy. It's just interesting that the Republican Party is really going to take this wave and ride on the Trump boat. They really riding with Trump. Y'all, they are really riding with Trump after all of the indictments, after all of the charges, after all of the hush money and all of the stuff that he's done, the classified docs, the election interference, all of this stuff. This major party is still putting its backing behind it. And even after the fact that Trump installed his people into the RNC, he put his people there to take over the RNC. We talked about that. After all of that, they're still going to put his people. They're still backing. Going back to the original comment, mind blowing. Mind blowing. David, you said this is a very naive and superficial understanding of presidential candidates. Very naive and superficial understanding. If we had more time, I would want to go deeper into that, David. But we're looking at this. We're looking at this, right? And this is the choice that Americans will have to make. This is the great choice that we find ourselves in. And so, for the next few months, for the next 8 months, we're going to have to mentally, emotionally, physically get ourselves to a place to accept this fate that it's between these two men. And how is that going to shape, or how is that going to move this country forward in a much more inclusive, progressive way? It's a lot to take in, but this is just a check-in. This is just to go to show you that we're at that point where these two candidates are on the verge of clinching their nominations, and will be the presidential election of 2024. I don't know what else to say, folks. I don't know what else to say, but we just got to get involved. We got to go out and vote. We got to get ourselves knowledgeable. And hopefully we can get some type of interest, something that we put on a table to be addressed, some type of real assurance that we're going to get something, whether it's from Trump. So for those of you who believe Trump can bring it, or whether it's from President Biden, we still got to put our piece, we still got to get our interest and put it out there to be supported. So this is going to be interesting for the next 8 months. All right, folks, I got to take a quick pause when we come forward. Let's talk about learning, leading, advocating locally as we check in with Miss Bessie Adams, who serves as the councilwoman at large for Grand Prairie, Texas, as she's a part of the National League of Cities conference that is happening right now. And we'll talk a little bit about local leadership, local politics, and local engagement. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Okay, let's talk a little more about politics. But before we go to our first guest today, we got joining us Councilwoman at Large, Miss Bessie Adams, to talk to us from the great city of Grand Prairie, Texas. But I want to just kind of put some final thoughts on the previous conversation as we talked about President Biden, former President Trump, very close to winning clinching the nominations of their parties, right? If it goes well, if it goes that way in today's elections, then you have 4 states that are going to the polls in some smaller areas, but Georgia, Washington State, Mississippi, and Hawaii. If you know folks down in any of those states, call them, encourage them to go to the polls, make sure that our voter turnout is very high. My team came up and it found the data around independence. 49% of registered adults in this country are independent. 49% of registered voters of adults in this country are independent. So that goes to show you, this is not a small number. This is nearly half of those who are eligible to vote are independents. All right, now, on that note, let me bring our very special guest. She is the councilwoman at large for the city of Grand Prairie, Texas. She is checking in from the National League of Cities conference that is happening right now. And we want to welcome her to the airways of the Black Star Network here on The Culture, Mrs. Bessie Adams. Mrs. Adams, good afternoon. How are you today?
I am fine. How are you? Really
I'm good.
To be on your show today.
Well, I thank you so much. We are certainly honored to have you as well as a very special guest. I guess you kind of took a little bit of the tail end of this last conversation as we look at how former President Donald Trump, President Biden, very close to clinching the party's nomination. I know this is a big talking point, especially among the National League of Cities, and the president himself is going to be a part of the conference over these next few days.
Yes, he was here yesterday.
He was there yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of this in terms of just the chatter, the culture, the politics that we're in? What do you make of this? Some folks are like, okay, we're gearing up for round 2. And other folks are saying, okay, I may not vote because they don't feel like this 2-party system is, these 2 candidates are going to be the best. What do you make of all of this?
You know, it's a lot involved because, first of all, get out and vote. Get out and vote. Be educated voters. I would go out on the line to say that I'm a moderate Democrat. And I think both parties have gone to the extreme so much that you feel like you're extreme left or extreme right. But my background is finance. I believe in being fiscally sound. And so there are some takeaways on the Republican side that can be used in the Democratic side and vice versa.
Hold on, Ms. Adams. Wait a minute.
Let me tell you now, I am definitely a diehard Democrat. And I always say because Jesus was a Democrat. But let me tell you, you've got to, there is just like there's multiple shades of African Americans, there are multiple shades of Democrats. And so I don't forsake the fact that we must help people. We need to have social resolutions and not a bunch of sideline gibberish. We need to make things happen for marginalized people. You know, we need to make sure those marginalized people are knowledgeable and make sure that they're eligible to vote. And so you can't make a change if you don't have a seat at the table. So absolutely. I think we need to be just educated on the parties. Now, if you want to, I guess, go to extremes on both sides of the aisle, then you will have an independent party.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
but it's interesting though, Mrs. Adams, that we find that we're back at this place. Like I just pulled up a little piece of history. We haven't seen this since 1956 for this country. We have 2 U.S. presidents that kind of do a rematch. So we're finding ourselves back at this place. But this is a very different race. This is not what we saw in 2020. And it's amazing. It's the great thing about presidential elections is that you can kind of do an assessment over the past 3.5, 4 years. But look how far the country has gone. I mean, we saw what we saw on January the 6th. And now we're at this point where we're at a whole different place in this country, and it could be a lot for the American people, for constituents all across this country, to see the shifts in conversation. Look, of course, with Roe v. Wade, of course, with affirmative action, of course, with anti-DEI policies. I mean, there's all these things that are happening affecting particularly Black people in this country. And so how do you advise folks to handle all of these changes in such a short period of time in the midst of so much uncertainty?
Well, let me tell you, my recommendation is, I know we have major national decisions to make, but who get the work done is the local people on the local level. And
Right.
so that's where you need to start. You need to hold everybody accountable for what you say you're going to do. But it's when you can go to a city council meeting and talk to a elected official face to face almost every day, anytime you want to, that's how you get things started. That's how you get things changed. So I'm really excited to be first time with the National League of Cities. But I know prior to being elected, that's where I knew my voice was the loudest. On the local level, nationally, I can make points, I can argue, I can be supportive of, my party or my president or whoever my candidate is going to be. But just like President Biden was here yesterday, I couldn't touch him, I couldn't get near him. But on the local level, you can. And we are accessible, and you can make changes that are closer to your day-to-day living.
All right, look, we're going to take a quick pause because I love that. That's a great segue for us to talk about engagement, but we got to take a quick pause. But when we come forward, folks, we'll continue the conversation with Councilwoman Bessie Adams from the city of Grand Prairie, Texas, as we talking about learning, leading, and advocating locally. Let's continue the conversation on the other side. Post your comments, share your thoughts or your questions, and let's continue the discussion right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shots.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We are checking in with Councilwoman Bessie Adams of Grand Prairie, Texas, who is down in D.C. for the National League of Cities conference that is happening over these next few days. And we're talking about leading, learning, and advocating locally. And Councilwoman Adams, you mentioned something that is so pivotal, which is that even though we have all of this uncertainty and all of this chatter on the federal level, that the real change starts on the local level.
Absolutely.
And you know, and I'm wondering, you know, how do we get that part of the message across? Because I truly believe, Councilwoman, that we are in a different time, because the situation that we're facing, I'm saying especially as Black folks, the challenges that we're facing require us to become active citizens. It does not require us to just sit on the sidelines. And I think traditionally, for the past few decades, that's what we were hoping, that the courts would save us, that some particular law would save us. Now, we're seeing that on a local level and on a state level, these things, all of these challenges are coming at us. And I feel like a lot of Black folks in this country that are like, what do I do? How do I handle this? And so I think there has to be some reprogramming, some retraining done. Absolutely. To say, you know what, we got to get involved locally. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, and that is so true. The question is, how do we get more people involved? People will go vote on a national level, but won't vote on a local level. And so having that education, having that conversation with them is what's vital in order for the mindset to change. And so I think being status quo, sitting on the sideline, wishing and waiting, you can't. You got to jump in and do what you can do. You got to advocate for yourself, because there's no savior coming. We got to save, we got to save ourselves. We got to get our points across, our initiatives, our concerns. I, for instance, have only been on council 8 months. And so I'm very new, but this is my first NLC, but I wanted change. I wanted to be a part of the change, and I took out a 10-year incumbent. And when you think about the city of Grand Prairie, we're right at 209,000 people, but we had an all-white male majority, one female white woman on our council, but that wasn't the makeup of our city. And in less than 3 years, we have a minority majority sitting on council. And I'm the first woman of color to win an at-large seat. And just the year before my election, we had the first Black female. And so now.
So I'm sorry, Councilwoman, it's crazy. In 2024, we're still being first. Black women are still breaking those ceilings.
Yes. But.
Wow.
We're late to the party, but we have arrived now. We have a seat, at the table. Right. And it is unfortunate in 2024 that I'm saying I'm the first of anything like that. But that's our reality. And most communities want to keep it that way. and they're comfortable with the status quo, but you cannot be comfortable. As a minority, you can't sit and say nothing and do nothing. You've got to get involved. And like I said, this is my first year with NLC, but I'm going to show you my badge. I'm involved in all of these committees and on all of these boards because I know I got to hit the ground running. I got work to do. I got representation. I got to bring information back to my city. But at the same time, I want a seat at the table. I'm in a learning position, in a listening position, but I still have a voice. And just having the presence, just your presence being there is a game changer by itself.
Do you think that the push right now, what's the talk among you and your colleagues at NLC in terms of how to create a pipeline for more citizen participation?
What we're trying to do is, twofold. We're having more town hall meetings. The town hall meetings can't be on a Wednesday at 5:00 because we are a working community. We are a family community. So you can't, take your baby to the Little League football game, cook, work on homework, and try to get to a town hall meeting. And so we have changed to town hall meetings on Saturdays. We have virtual meetings. And we have with us in DC a youth council. So that's the second part. We have got civics is out the door. I don't know who teach civics in high school anymore, but that's a pivotal course because that is what first teach you what government is all about and then engage you to be a part of it. And so the mayor has a teen council. And so we have two, not three, I think three other young ladies with us. And they have their own track and hopefully they'll stay engaged and involved. But it takes starting at the high school level, making things accessible to people, working class people, so they can see what their city is doing. And that will interest them and I think engage them.
I've worked with young leaders, young political leaders in the city of Baltimore. I've relocated to Los Angeles, but in Baltimore, I did a lot of work with young leaders, getting them politically involved. Trying to create a pathway for young leaders to not just fill its seats as elected representatives, but more importantly, just to understand the system, to understand how the policies. And one of our watchers, Vinga Dragon, said, preach policy and follow through, grab voters who care about policy. There are a number, and I agree with Vinga Dragon that there are a number of our people who want to know those policies, but do you, from your position, do you think that policy is enough to attract people to really get engaged? Because we could talk policy all day. I can tell you what the good ones and the bad policy. But what is that the way to get more people politically engaged, or is there something else that needs to be done?
I don't think policy is going to interest them enough, although that's the main factor. And that's what we eventually get to. I think just showing first, letting people know that their voice counts, making sure they have the accessibility to be in the room, making sure that they they understand that their opinions matter. So getting them interested, whether it's on a parks board, whether it's something that's happening in their neighborhood, they want cleaner streets, they want whatever the case is, give them a task or engage them at their day-to-day. And then once they become engaged, understand how change is made, then we get to the policy. We get to the ordinances and the policies. So just talking policy, I don't think that's going to, especially, so I have young adult children. They are passionate about jobs that have purpose.
Yeah.
Unlike my generation, they don't, okay, that's great, you make money, but they're okay if they don't make a lot of money, if it doesn't serve their passion and their purpose. And so that's how we're going to need to attract the younger generation to get involved. Like, this is why it means this or that. The policy is the writing, but to get to the policy, there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of engagement, there's a lot of opinions that need to be had. And I think if you give them something with purpose, then we'll get to the policy piece.
Right. Give them something with purpose. And I think more importantly, connecting folks to see that your policy leads to some sort of tangible action or some tangible change.
Absolutely.
Right? Right. Because again, like for example, the White House has put out great ideas in policy. And I mean, like you mentioned at the beginning of our talk here, there are some, and I know some people might be mad at you, they're gonna be mad at me. There are some policies on the Republican side that could actually, whether it's fiscal policies or some other policy, that could potentially help. The American people, that could potentially help Black America. But because it's coming from that side of the aisle, it becomes lost in the translation. And I'm wondering, can we, with local and state government being so contentious, can we clear the air for us to have some real conversations that's going to lead to progress? Do you foresee that as possible? Or at this point, we just got to all choose sides and hope for the best?
Well, on the local level, we cross the aisles all the time. We have to, because it's about Grand Prairie. It's what's best for our citizens and our cities. And so we typically don't even talk red or blue. We talk purple, because at the end of the day, we want what's best for our citizens. They voted us in this office to serve them and their interests. And so that's what we focus on, and we can do so easily on the local level because it's a nonpartisan race, but you kind of know where people stand, But at the end of the day, we have to lay on the side, because just like the White House can shut down because they can't decide on the budget, local government cannot. We cannot. We still got to provide fire, police, EMT. We still got to provide protection for our citizens. So we can't, think about, let me take a 2-week break and come back and see if I want to pass this budget or not. No, we've got to make things happen because our cities, our neighbors depend on it.
Absolutely. Let me get about 30 more seconds from you here, Councilwoman. JM said there are more people sitting out this year than ever before. So how is going to vote going to help now? And I'm not sure what particular data that JM is looking at, but it is interesting. I feel like that's part of the sentiment, which is that people are going to sit out. Are you concerned as a councilwoman, as an elected official, as a Black elected official, that we are going to become so disengaged, we're going to become apathetic about this whole place that we find ourselves in, that we're not going to get involved, whether locally or nationally?
Yeah, I'm hearing that too. People are just it's so off-putting to some people. But when you don't vote, you vote. Just because you don't vote doesn't mean it's not an impact. It is.
Right.
So find your candidate, do your due diligence, make a decision, and vote. And it's heartbreaking, especially from hearing it from African Americans, where we know people lost their lives, Black and white, lost their lives to give us the right to vote not too long ago. So we cannot get so disenchanted that we feel it's not our civil duty. We are standing on the shoulders of people that have died, horrendous deaths, to give us the right to vote.
Absolutely.
And we don't. So that is disheartening. I hate that, but that is the sentiment. And that's unfortunate.
Absolutely. It is very unfortunate. We're going to have to see how this plays out. But more importantly, Councilwoman, we're going to, I thank you for your time being a part of the conversation. I know you got a lot to learn. You're getting all the tools to do the work that you do down in Grand Prairie, Texas, and more importantly, with your colleagues at the National League of Cities. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much, Councilwoman.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Thank you. Folks, we will continue the conversation about that. We will certainly continue the conversation about that. Look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's switch gears. Let's talk about what the NAACP is saying to student athletes as they are advising that student athletes should reconsider coming to Florida because of its anti-DEI policies. We'll talk about that. And later on, we'll talk about today being Equal Pay Day, as the conversation about gender pay equity continues to rage on, as Black women are still feeling the brunt of not getting paid enough for the great work that they do. So we'll talk a little bit more about that with our sister Amber Webb Sims and you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Big shout out to those who are joining the Culture crew, joining folks in the chat right now as we're streaming live on Big Brother Roland Martin's social media pages, on his Facebook page, as well as his YouTube channel. And you could do the same, folks. Just jump into the chat, be a part of the conversations. We got a lot of people that are talking about all of the topics we've already discussed in the first half of the show. But this is an opportunity for you to say something. And unlike any other space, we hear you. I raise up some of your comments. That way, this is an interactive engagement. We're having a conversation about things that are affecting all of us, especially those of us in Black America. So we want you to join the chat right now as we're streaming on Big Brother Roland Martin's social media page, on his Facebook page, as well as his YouTube channel. We're also streaming on our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Go to our website today, download the app for free, follow us on social media at Black Star Network, and we actually put something in the pot as we need your support to power us in this digital space. We're producing content like no other platform, and this content is essential for the culture. So your support means everything to us. And for those who have already supported us, who have already given donations, we thank you, and thank you for your support. All right, folks, let's do this. Let's switch gears a little bit. I got my sister, Sister Amber Webb Sims, who is an attorney, and she serves as co-host of the Brokish podcast. Y'all can find that on where all podcasts are streaming. But she is a dynamic sister that is always bringing us some latest news and information. And today I wanted to talk to her about a couple of things. But the first one is the situation down in Florida, which is no surprise. But welcome, Amber. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me, Farajii. I appreciate it. It's good to be back.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about what's going on in the state of Florida as the NAACP chapter down there is advocating and urging Black student athletes to reconsider attending public colleges and universities in Florida. They said this in a letter to the NCAA President Charlie Baker on Monday, and this was in response to the University of Florida and other state schools that have eliminated their DEI programs. And this letter is also addressed to current and prospective student athletes. Let me share with you what the latest is from the Associated Press. This is coming from the NAACP, saying that Black students should reconsider attending public colleges and universities in Florida. They said that this is not about politics, the letter read. It's about the protection of our community, the progression of our culture, and most of all, it's about your education and your future. Now, this letter was signed by NAACP National Board of Directors Chairman, Mr. Leon Russell, the NAACP President and CEO, Mr. Derek Johnson. But this wasn't the only group of Black folks that have spoken out about anti-DEI policy. Just a few days ago, I shared here on the show, Amber, the mayor of Birmingham, Alabama. He said that Black student athletes should reconsider coming to the state of Alabama because of their anti-DEI policies as they're looking at that latest state bill down there. What is happening here right now? Is this something that we need to really listen to? Should we follow the leadership of the NAACP on this matter?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things that the NAACP is highlighting is the economic value that our student athletes bring to states that are clearly antagonistic to their humanity. These players come and their images are commodified and profiteered. They are basically agents of financial gain for the very states that are seeking to eliminate programs that create inclusive and equitable campuses. And so I think that, as always, when you are challenging the status quo, you have to hit people where it hurts. And so not only is this about the protection of the students, but it is a rebuff to states like Florida and states like Alabama by clearly saying you will not profit off of us, you will not make money off of our talents while creating environments that are hostile to our humanity.
And I think that is the other part of this, right? Where, we're back at this boycott space, but more importantly, we're in a fight with our own states. And I'm wondering, Amber, like, from your point of view, from a legal perspective, how is this able to happen? How are these states, like the state of Florida, like the state of Alabama, how are they able to get these policies across and then still get the type of pushback from citizens of the state to say this is not right, this is not good, will not move this state forward? From a legal perspective, are they standing on good ground or no?
Well, there's the legal question and there's the political question. I think legally it is pretty clear that states have wide latitude to create programs that push diversity forward as long as those programs do not touch and concern quotas that basically do not essentially say we're giving a preference or an advantage to somebody because of what race they are, because of what gender they are, or because of what protected class that they fall into. However, programs that are rooted in remediation, which is what DEI programs aim to do, which is essentially to correct the historical significance of past discrimination, of past systemic inequities that are still reverberating on campuses, it is very clear, both constitutionally and statutorily, that states have wide latitude to do that. Where the problem comes in is that the very states that are enacting these laws, places like Florida, places like Texas, Utah, Alabama, they have Supreme Courts that are stacked with political actors that are going to uphold the foolishness. And that is really where the biggest hurdle is where you have a highly politicized judiciary filled with people who are political cronies and not necessarily jurists. It makes it substantially more difficult for litigants to use the court as a pathway to challenge these problematic laws.
Absolutely, absolutely. We know that last year, the Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, he signed a bill prohibiting the use of state funds for any DEI programs. And I'm blown away that, you know, in the state of Florida, that this is happening, considering how many Black folks, Latinos, and others, Haitians, all of these other groups of people that are represented, and yet the state of, the state of Florida can still pass laws that is essentially against inclusion, against having these conversations, and against the value of diversity. If state courts are being stacked and are filled with political actors, as you said, what's the recourse for Black voters in those situations?
Well, I think that's a twofold question. So the first thing, obviously, for Black voters is to be very clear, not just in making sure that candidates that you support are unequivocal in being against these policies, but also to encourage the federal government, because the Florida law goes very far. Not only does it preclude the use of state funds on public campuses, it also bans the use of federal funds. And so I would be very interested to see how the Department of Justice and how the Department of Education respond to that. And so it's important for us to keep this not only on the radar on the state level, but to continue to draw attention to it on the national level, and to encourage the Department of Education and the Department of Justice to get involved and do what they can to make sure that federal funds are allocated for the purposes for which the federal government has earmarked them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when you're talking about Black student athletes, right, and that you're talking about a group of folks who bring a lot of money to the state, right? Then not only am I hearing the anti-DEI side of things, but I'm also hearing the cultural side of things, right? Because if you're the parents of these Black student athletes, and these schools that are down in Alabama and Florida and other spaces and other places that have these are schools that will position your son or your daughter to be taken to the next level. What do you say to those parents who are like, what, now you don't want me to come to Florida because of what? Who might be like, you know what? Well, we still got to go to Florida because my son he's trying to be in a D1. He playing this level. He playing that level. We trying to take him to the pros. What do you say to those parents, Amber?
You know, I think that Ron DeSantis is just an awful person. I think it is an untenable position to put people in, because for a lot of these students, particularly students who are first generation college students, students who other than their athletic success would not be able to go to college, it is unfair to them for them to have to be caught in the political crosshairs when making decisions. They ought to be able to consider what is best for them, where they will flourish. However, you know, unfortunately for a lot of these young people, they are learning a very valuable lesson early on, which is that money talks. And sometimes you have to be willing to put your values and your integrity and your morals on the table and leverage the skills and leverage the value you have to stand up for what you believe in. So yes, it is an awful position to put an 18-year-old in who wants to go to college, who wants to be an athlete, who wants to create a pathway for success to themselves, but at the same time, for people who have no regard for your humanity, for people who are willing to actively take steps to make it difficult for you to go to college and to flourish and to have opportunities that exist for other students, you ought to be considering that in the sauce as well. And that matters not just to your athletic success, but to your holistic success as well, because people who will do you like that do not care at all whether you do well once you get there.
There it is. Look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more from our sister, Amber Webb Sims, who's an attorney, co-host of the Brokish podcast. And folks, I want to hear what you have to say as we're talking about how the NAACP has urged Black student athletes to reconsider going to Florida public schools and colleges because of their stance on diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's your take on this, crew? Post your comments as we're streaming live on Big Brother Roland Martin's Facebook page and YouTube channel. And of course, stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch get wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, checking in with my sister, Amber Webb Sims, who serves as the co-host of the Brokish podcast, and you can check her out. She got a lot to say. Her podcast get a little heated and hot, folks, so she got a lot to say, but she's also a licensed attorney as well. And we're talking about how the NAACP are urging that the NAACP, the national office, as well as the Florida chapter, is urging Black student athletes to reconsider going to Florida schools because of their anti-DEI policies. And this is putting a lot of schools and a lot of money on hold and kind of disrupting some things with the NAACP putting this out there. And just to simply ask the question, should we listen to what the NAACP is saying? Again, Birmingham Mayor, he said the same thing, that Black student athletes should not go to Alabama schools because of their anti-DEI policies. Should we listen to him as well as we have this conversation? I would love to hear what y'all got to say as we are streaming live on Big Brother Roland Martin's Facebook page and on his YouTube channel, and let me know what you think about this as we have these conversations. Amber, I do want to kind of go back to something that is also mentioned in the letter. This is coming from the NAACP. It says, while it is our duty to spread awareness and encourage action around these egregious assaults, we also recognize that protests can come at a price. The sad reality is, for many Black student athletes, collegiate sports may be their sole opportunity at achieving the upward mobility necessary to propel them into their rightful places in society.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know what I'm about to ask? It's like, how to, you know, and it's, to me, it sucks that we put so much on the next generation, and then at the same time, we put so much on this, I guess, this pipeline that, oh my gosh, the only way that, you know, and particularly for Black boys to be successful, you got to take the sports route, and from elementary school all the way to the college and to get out of the hood. So it's like, now you mentioned this earlier, when you have 18-year-olds in this crossroads, not only he got to think about his own self, he got to think about, like, damn, he carrying the burden of his family on it. You know, I got to do this for my family. So he might not say nothing. He might be like, look, I'm gonna just stay calm because I need to get this scholarship, because I need to get my mama out there. It's a lot.
That's by design. I want to be clear, because remember, this is not the first DEI fight that Ron DeSantis has picked. This is the second. He tried it with Disney and he lost spectacularly. And so it is not lost on us that now he is trying this DEI stunt with a more vulnerable population, with people who are precisely in the predicament that you just described. So he knows exactly what he's doing, because the last time he went to war with Goliath and he got sat out because Disney had things in place that allowed its governance to make decisions that essentially kept it moving long after DeSantis stripped it of its governing power. And so this is part two of the attempt to make the point and to come at efforts to be inclusive that DeSantis hates and that he uses to pander to his base. And so it should not be lost on anybody that he is picking a weaker opponent by design. These are kids. These are kids who really should just be focused on making the decision that is best for them. But unfortunately, they are being placed in a decision to think not only as students, but as economic drivers about the value that they bring and whether they want to bring that value to a place that has no regard for their humanity.
And especially given those NIL deals, right? Those name, images, and likeness deals that now Black student athletes and all athletes can now start to profit from. You know, I mean, and those deals get crazy. I've been hearing some crazy numbers for student athletes. But you're right, you know, it becomes this other thing. Let me just share what folks are talking about as we're having this conversation, Amber. Let me see here. I saw something from, who was it? Oh, my sister Janelle Fields. She said, we ask our students to fight for the rights that many adults sit on their butts and allow these officials to take away. Woo, that's a scathing criticism of what we're seeing. Do you see that to be the case here, though?
You know, I don't think that this is a case where we've sat and necessarily allowed it, because this is a very active disinformation and pandering campaign that is many years and many decades in the making. And so I don't think this has anything to do with us being passive or not doing what we need to do. This is all a part of that reactionary root that is still very bitter, that white people were shifted from the center when Barack Obama got elected to the presidency. And all of the extremism you see coming after that is largely because of that. It is the fear that white people exhibit when they are not the center.
And that's very real, very real. Let me go to my sister Corinna Denise, who is also down, who's in the state of Florida. She said this current generation could not even begin to comprehend sacrifice. Ooh.
Yeah.
Amber, and I'm glad Corinna brought this up, because I think that is one of the missing pieces in this the struggle that we find ourselves in. And this is not just about Florida or DEI. This is in general, where, you know, we talk about change, we talk about making things better, we talk about making some progress, but then the thing that we don't talk about quite as much, that we praise our past leaders for doing, is that they gave it all, they put it all on the table, they made that sacrifice. But then when it comes to us in this current moment, this current time, in our current generation, it's like, why can't we just have a better policy? Why can't we just put somebody in place to make this stuff happen? That the conversation around sacrifice becomes a little different, some more nuanced and less active. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, you know, part of it, I think, is that's a little bit of a red herring, because remember, our ancestors, our foremothers and our forefathers made those sacrifices with the express intention that we wouldn't have to, right? And so when we focus on how we are responding to the injustice and to the inequity and what we should be doing, I think some of that is a distraction to keep from focusing on people like DeSantis who are doing it. And so I'm not here to police how Black people choose to respond. I'm not here to tell anybody what decision they should or should not be making, or render opinions on the willingness that they have to sacrifice in a system that wants to consume us all. I want to keep my eye on the prize, which is deconstructing the system that puts us in that untenable situation in the first place. The first place. And every bit of misdirection we have off of that gives them more strength to keep doing it while we're talking about something that is secondary to what's primary. So let's keep the first thing, which is that we need to deconstruct these systems and sit these bad actors down.
Absolutely. Tony O'Hurd said Black athletes are going to go to Florida regardless. So the NAACP just talking like usual.
Well, some of them may, but what I think is that all it takes is just one. You know, just one student to decide. You know, remember what happened, the momentum we saw when Deion Sanders went to Jackson State, and you all of a sudden had blue chip recruits who were deciding, you know, to turn down deals at NCAA Division I schools. And we saw that there was a great momentum shift towards athletes seriously considering historically Black colleges and universities. And so all it takes is one student with the courage to say, I'm not doing it. And that creates a momentum shift that is significant. And even when other people decide that they might not follow suit, what it does is it keeps it in the national discourse, and it puts the issue front and center for us to remember what we need to be doing and what our ultimate goal should be.
And you know what, Amber, and we're going to take another quick pause. It is interesting that we need to even do that.
Yes.
You know, but I understand, because in the course of a day, we are so inundated with so much information. Some of it is useful, others is not. I know when I go on my timeline, or, you know, I'm looking at stuff about some hip hop artist or somebody, some celebrity divorce or something like that, right? So the ideas of fighting for the liberation of Black folks, the ideas around, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, all of these brilliant things that we should be fighting for can't be put to the side. And in a lot of ways, we have to constantly be reminded, brought back to the center, and say, hey, look, this is a problem. We got to move forward on it. And it's like you got to constantly, you know, it's like a student coming late into the class. You got to bring them up to speed on the situation so that everybody can be on the same page. And I feel like that's the case that we're seeing in Black America, that some of us are further along in understanding what the stakes are than others. How do we close that gap, though?
I think we close that gap by being very clear that there is nothing inside this system that can save us. And so we definitely have to be willing to engage the system as a means of survival, to reduce the harm that the system does to us. But we got to be very clear that this system is rotten to its core, and there is no redeeming quality about it. And unless and until we completely deconstruct it and reimagine what a world looks like where all people are free and where there is life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice for all people, then we are never going to get it right. So I think the biggest thing is for us to realize that there is nothing we can do inside of this corrupt framework that's going to save us. You know.
You said a word right there. You said a whole word right there, Amber. I'm telling you, because, and as an attorney and one that is working on that side of things, that is powerful. That is powerful for us to recognize that. And you know, again, I think that our people just have to be reminded. The thing is, as you just said, we have to reimagine a different world. And that is the part I think is missing. I'll never forget the conversation I had with my sister last week, who put out the book Imagine Freedom. That is what's going to have to happen. Like, our imagination, our vision has to be made clearer to even comprehend and even to really think. And people tend to blame, oh, it's not going to happen. Like, it can happen. We could be in a different place. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some sacrifice. It's going to take some time, but it can happen because guess what? The current United States of America that we're living in is a reimagined version of what we saw 50 years ago.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we just got to keep moving towards that.
Absolutely. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about today being Equal Pay Day as we continue to celebrate Women's History Month. We'll check in with our sister Amber and with you to get the latest on that. And more importantly, how can we have Black women to close the gap? How can that happen? How can we make that a reality in a new reimagined future? Folks, we'll have that discussion on the other side. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. I'm joined by my sister, Amber Webb Sims, who is an attorney and co-host of the Brokish Podcast. Make sure y'all check her out on the Brokish Podcast, and they're having some phenomenal conversations on there. And today, we're having another phenomenal conversation with our sister, Amber, as we talk about today is Equal Pay Day. And this is the day that the conversation about women getting paid just as much as men continues to rage on. Now, I'm going to share something with you from the census report. Take a look at this, folks. And this is crazy. Whether women earn a post-secondary certificate or graduate from a top-tier university, they still make about 71 cents on the dollar compared with men at the same education level, according to the census research. And take a listen to this, folks. In spite of the fact that women comprise more than half of college-educated workers and participate in the labor force at record times. Now, here's what the word is about this as we look at this situation, this issue, is that the main point here is that there's a substantial gap at every single level, added census economist and co-author Ariel Binder. Now, Ms. Binder it also pointed out that field of study, choice of occupation, and hours account for much of the discrepancies, but not all. Field of study, for instance, contribute to the pay gap much more for top graduates at 24.6%, but for less selective degree holders accounted for only a sliver at 3.8%. And the number of hours and weeks worked affect the pay gap more for certificate earners at 26.4% than selective bachelor degree earners at 11.3%, suggesting there is a bigger gender difference in work participation for certificate holders, according to Ms. Binder. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like the higher that women go, the less money they get. And then if you have a certificate, then that's crazy.
Yeah.
For today's equal pay day. Go ahead.
I just want to point out that the 71 cents is when you have all women in the bowl. That number goes down when you just extract the figure for Black women. I believe it's less than 60 cents. It's around 58 or 59 cents on the dollar for Black women. So it's even less when you take white women out of the equation.
So, okay, so the conversation about equal pay, and I mean, it's still happening, 71% on the dollar. That means you still, like, where do we need to go with this conversation at this point? Amber, when we're talking about money, and it's interesting that you have these statistics, right? But then on the cultural side, we'll hear Black women are just killing it, right? We'll have those conversations. Oh man, Black women are killing. Where are you, Black man? You're not catching up, Black man. How do we reconcile these two realities? Are Black women actually killing it? Or are we just saying that to ourselves to make ourselves feel better? Do Black men need to do more? I mean, what's happening here?
No, we killing it. We just not getting our coin. We killing it. We just not getting paid for killing.
How do you kill it and not get rewarded for it?
Well, let me tell you, I think that there is a very large undercurrent inside of the American labor force that messages Black women that we should be grateful, that we should feel privileged to occupy certain seats. And because we should feel grateful and privileged to be in those seats, that we don't have the right to advocate to be fully and fairly compensated according to the skills and the talents and the experience and expertise that we bring to a position. And so there is this notion that we should just be so pleased that we've been invited to the table, that whatever they give us, we should just gladly accept it because we are there. And
but culturally though, Amber,
yeah,
that's been emphasized.
Yes,
culturally, that's been emphasized that Black women are in the C-suites. Black women are in, breaking the barriers. We just talked to one councilwoman who became a first in her area in Grand Prairie, Texas, for being on the council as a Black woman. I mean, but culturally, we put a lot of emphasis on being at the table, or quote unquote representation. Does that need to change from your vantage point?
I think it needs to be and both. We've been taught for so long that representation is so significant that we should be willing to do whatever we have to be present. And so Black women are statistically least likely to negotiate salary packages, even non-financial benefits, like your title. So for example, it makes a big difference whether you work at a company and you're just called an attorney, but are you called a deputy general counsel or head of a department? We are across the board least likely to negotiate for those non-tangibles that have financial benefits further down the road. We are less likely to negotiate for deferred compensation and other types of funds that long-term pay dividends. And I think that happens because, again, when we get to the table, we're just sort of presented this package like a gift, like, oh, look what we've done for you. And when we push back and negotiate, we are seen as aggressive, we are seen as difficult, and we are seen as unappreciative. And so many of us are taught to be very hesitant about asking for more than what we are offered.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I just took a moment to look up here. that you have equal pay day during this time of the year, and then you have Black Women's Equal Pay Day, July 27th.
Yes.
That drops.
Yes, that's what I was mentioning earlier. So that's the step. Today is the 71 cents. July represents the 59 cents. So Black women have to work 3-4 months after our white counterparts to get to equal pay day. So we don't get equal pay day in March. We get it further into the year.
Damn. All right, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's hear what the crew is saying about this. Folks, what's your take on this as we're talking about equal pay day and during Women's History Month? And where do we need to go with this conversation to close the gap of inequity and inequality on the paycheck? Stay with us. That conversation continues on the other side here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I've been talking to my sister Amber Webb Sims, who is the co-host of the Brokerage Podcast, as we talk about today is Equal Pay Day. And then later on in the year, it's Black Women's Equal Pay Day. But you know what? I'm going to just throw it all together. Black Women's Equal Pay Day Part 1, and then we got Part 2 in July. That's how we're going to clear that up. But the fact is that women, and I'm not going to just act like, it's just Black women that are suffering from this disparity, right? We could talk about white women. We could talk about Latino women. You could talk about all women from various places that are suffering from this. But I was always taught that a nation can rise no higher than its woman, right? So regardless of whether she's Black or not, the fact remains that if you continue to suppress the progress, the voice, the future of women, that you're not going to get that far. And I see that is one of the main problems of this country, Amber. The fact that women are not being heard. Now, yes, certainly strides are being made, gains are being achieved, but at the end of the day, women are still falling way behind than men. And in some places, y'all are the ones that are blazing the trail. Now, some people would disagree with that. I think some people, I saw confetti. You said earlier in the conversation, Black women want us to be protesters. How about you let us be the leaders? There are a lot of redeeming qualities of this system. Would you agree with that analysis from confetti, Amber?
I think it depends on the context you're talking in. Because again, this is not a question of whether Black women have the capacity to lead or whether Black women are leading. This is really a question about whether we are being adequately compensated for the value we're adding to the system. And so I think that's a slightly different question. Because even if you talk about allowing people to lead, you still have to think about the implications of that. In a system where women who work are still statistically most likely to be the primary person responsible for managing the household, child rearing, doing household chores, it's not whether I can lead, but there's only 24 hours in the day, right? And so when we talk about, is there access to childcare? Can I afford the childcare, right? Is there parity in the home where my partner is contributing to the running and the management of the household to the same degree and extent as I am? Those are the things that need to be addressed. Even if I have the capacity to lead and the competence to lead, I I still need to have the time, and I still also need to be compensated with the resources needed to support my household.
Right, absolutely. And where does men play into this, right? Especially black men, right? Because yeah, we know that black women are getting, 59 cents, 71 cent on the dollar. But we also know that, that men, we're not black men, we're not getting our full dollar as well. So how do men play a role in pushing for that gap to be closed for our sisters, for our wives, for our girlfriends, for our mothers? Where do men fit into all this based on what you're saying?
I think that the biggest thing that men can do is to be open and honest and transparent about what they're making so that women can have a way to seek remediation when pay inequity exists. And I'll give you a real life example, and I'm going to name names because I'm not lying. I was an attorney for Farmers Insurance Company, and there was a nationwide class action that was filed on behalf of all the female attorneys that worked at Farmers Insurance across the country. And that class action eventually settled and women were compensated. I mean, most of us know usually when there's a class action, we get our check for like $12. I got $25,000 from that, which means that if that's what I got, I can only imagine how much I was underpaid. But the origin of that lawsuit was a man who was discussing how much he was being paid with a female attorney to give her the basis to go to management to try to get it remediated. And they refused, which prompted the lawsuit. And so the biggest thing that men can do is to be transparent, to be open, and to openly share that information so that women can arm themselves with what they need to know whether they are being inequitably compensated.
Brian, you said it along with Amber, so there needs to be more paid transparency.
Yes, absolutely. And there are certain states that require pay transparency, that require companies when they post jobs to post the salary range of a high end and a low end that they reasonably expect people to be compensated, which helps to give people an idea of where they fall. However, that is not federal law. So all states don't have to do it. So for example, our top offenders, places like Texas, places like Florida, they do not have pay transparency laws that require that. And so we are really looking to other colleagues, particularly male colleagues, to be transparent about what they're earning so that we can know what is happening and have something to compare it to.
And I mean, that has oftentimes been the catalyst for many conversations, right? Like we heard it from Farajii, from her ordeal in Hollywood to a lot of other industries where men are paid a lot more, right? And I think for men, we often say things like, oh man, yeah, women should get paid. But there's a difference, when I think of like a sister like Bell Hooks, who said that if you really care about a woman or women in general, that you should not just advocate, but you got to create a pathway for women to get the power, to get the respect that women deserve, right? So it's one thing to be like, yeah, I think women should get paid. But it's another thing to even advocate and possibly put yourself on the line to make sure that happens, right? To say that you are an ally of women and especially Black women, right?
Absolutely. Being willing to put your privilege on the line. Several years ago, I was in the middle of a trial and we were about to start an expert witness at the end of the day. And I went to the judge and to my opposing counsel, who was a male, and I said to them, I said, could we please hold this witness until tomorrow? Because I have to pick my kids up from daycare and the daycare closes at 6 o'clock. And if we start this witness, I will not make it in time to pick my children up. And the judge looked at me, and he was an older white man. And he said, don't your kids have a father? And then I was hoping that the opposing counsel kind of stood up for me. And he was like, well, I don't have a problem because my wife handles that. And that would have been a lovely opportunity for a man to put his privilege on the line, because we're both doing the same job, but you have a wife and I don't, right?
Right.
I got to go pick my kids up, right? And so, yes, those are just very small things that men can do to help to advocate for their female colleagues who are oftentimes not only doing the same work as you, but they're carrying the invisible load as well.
Damn. What happened to their father?
Yeah, like, don't your kids have a father? And I wanted to say, well, I'm not married, so they weren't immaculately conceived. Yes, they have a father, but I have to pick them up from daycare, you know? And so, yes, these are the things that happen to women every day. And I think about that often as the things that I face as an attorney. There's a level of privilege to that. I have some flexibility in my schedule, but there are women who are working all across the scale in this country who don't have that flexibility, who, if they don't show up, if they leave early, their job is on the line. And so we really need to be more mindful of how we are not only paying people, but the environments we are creating for the very people who are usually doing double duty, who are working and carrying the invisible load.
Absolutely. Cindy D, you said men can support us in everything we do. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, in a moment like that, you got to speak up. You just, you have to speak up, because if you don't, it will continue to be that's going to continue to be the culture of that situation.
Yes.
But that's harsh, man. I'm sorry. That is harsh. I've heard so many women who complained about, you know, workplace issues like that, where it's not considered, they don't get that same leniency. It's like, you know, a man can take a baby to the workplace and everybody's, oh, but if a woman takes a baby and the baby starts crying, people are like, aren't you going to take your child? You don't have a babysitter, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn.
Or not even taking the child. I remember when I was a prosecutor, there would be judges who would not consider favorably giving the female prosecutors in their court time to pump. You know, like, there were many of us who were new mothers and we needed to be able to pump at work. And there were certain judges who didn't take kindly to that. And it's like, well, this is a biological issue. Like, we have to do what we have to do. And so it's just kind of those things that, on top of the money, create issues that many women are facing in the workplace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's a fight that we have to fight.
Absolutely.
It's a fight that we have to fight. And, you know, when we're talking about pay equity, that's a fight that we have to fight. And it really helps the whole, not just one household. It helps the community. It helps us as a people that Black women are paid equal pay. You know, if not closer, you got to get closer. You know, right now, like you said, it's 59 cents for Black women. This particular information from the census says 71%. So we still got a long way to go. That's why I wore the shirt today. This is my shirt, y'all. This is my Rosa Parks shirt. She says, you must never be fearful about what you are doing when it is right. That's from Mother Rosa Parks. You must never be fearful about what you're doing when it is right. And when we see these things happening to Black women and to all women time and time again, you got to start, and I'm saying it to all of the men and the brothers, like, we got to say something just as much as we expect these women to say something. And then we can say something and get out the way. In that moment that you had with the judge, the guy could have said, hey, you know, judge, you know, I have no problem with that because you got to take care of the child. I'm good with that. Versus, I got a wife at home. And guess what? She reared my children and she stays in that kitchen. That is very unfortunate. So we still got a long way to go. Amber, how can people take a listen to the Brokerage podcast and all of the great insight that you give?
All right. Brokerage can be found on any platform that you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. We drop episodes on payday, the 1st and 15th of every month. So we would love for you all to listen and follow us on social media.
Was that by design? The 1st and 15th?
Yes.
Because it's Brokerage is talking about.
Yes. 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 Yes.
All right, y'all make sure y'all check out my sister Amber Webb Sims here on the Brokerage podcast. She's always talking about some great stuff. Plus, you can find her here on The Culture. We always kind of pull her in to have these discussions about everything from legal issues to women's issues and cultural issues and so much more. But Amber, I cannot thank you enough for your insight. You bring so much to the conversation, and I look forward to reconnecting with you very soon. Thank you for being so good for the culture, Amber.
Thank you for having me, and I'll be back when you invite me.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, folks. We are at that time now. Make sure y'all do your due diligence. Support us here at Black Star Network. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. And make sure you also follow us on social media at Black Star Network. And we would love to get your support as a donor, as an investor, as a stakeholder. So just go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, folks, make sure you check me out on social media. You can find me at The Real Farajii on Instagram, at Farajii on X platform, and at Farajii Muhammad on the Facebook platform as well. And I would love to connect with y'all. Big shout out to all of the new voices, the new insights and comments on our chat today. A lot of people came in, checked out the show, see what we were talking about. And I appreciate all of you for doing so. Big shout out to our OG legacy culture crew members that's been with us from day one, continuing to have these conversations, continuing to bring insight. It's just the show can't be as great as it is without you. So I thank each and every one of you for joining me in the chat today on both the X platform, Facebook platform, as well as YouTube. All right, stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But remember this, folks, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will chat tomorrow. We're checking in with our sister Suzette Speak for another exciting conversation right here, only here, exclusively here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Have a great evening. Peace.